Hello everyone, and welcome back to your second video in this series. This is actually going to be tutorial number 1. I'm labeling my first video tutorial number 0 because it wasn't really a tutorial. Now we're going to be actually writing some code today. Today's goal is to make a basic window that actually works. But before we get started, I want to mention something that I forgot to mention in the last video. And let's see, if we go to the Pygame site, right? This is the homepage. We can click on documentation here. This gives you to the official Pygame documentation. And for those of you who don't know, the best analogy I can give of documentation is basically it's like a wiki, except like more official, because people really can't edit it. It's created by the creator itself. So the documentation contains information about all the functions and modules in there, how to use them, and the format. So let's say I want to go over something the display module, Pygame.display. Forget something, so then if I click on display, it gives you all the functions in Pygame.display. So if I want Pygame.display.update, I see what it does. Update portions of the screen for software displays, or upgrade a full display surface to the screen, blah blah blah, and all so forth. So that's basically the documentation. You see all these libraries, and I'm going to be using this pretty often because, as I said before, I haven't used Pygame in quite a while now, and I forgot a lot of things. And this actually applies to many expert programmers. Many expert programmers will actually still use documentations because they don't memorize every single function. They get the general concept down, and then when they need to search up a certain function, they just go to the documentation. So let's see, there was something else I wanted to talk about before I got started, but forgot something. There was something else I wanted to talk about. I know it. Let's just jump right in. So we're in the Python shell. First things first, we need to open a new file. I usually use Control-N, but remember, file new. First things first is to save it. I'm going to save this in, let's see if I can find it. Tutorials, Pygame. Call this Pygame, not Pygame, game.py. Make sure you have the py extension. So now, first thing we do whenever we create a Pygame program is we import it. Import Pygame. Now, we'll understand this later, but we also need to import sys. That's short for system. Well, I'll explain why later. Next, we're going to need to initialize Pygame. So that's pygame.init. Initialize basically means start. So this function basically starts Pygame. Now you might be asking, why do we import it then? Well, when we import something, that basically it gives us access to all the functions, gives us access to everything in the library. It does not automatically start it for us. It only gives us access to its functions. The function pygame.init, this function actually starts Pygame. Now we need to actually create a window. I'm going to use the variable screen. You can use whatever you want. And that actually brings up another point. When you choose variable names, you want to be reasonable. Especially if you work with someone else. Like I'm trying to teach my friend and all of you guys as well. So I'm going to use variable names that make sense. Like if I were to just use a and like set this equal to pygame.display.set mode and like blah 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 and so forth, like you'll be asking, what is a? So I mean, if you're working on it by yourself, it's a self project. Like you can remember that a represents the screen, and go right ahead. That's fine by me, and actually it's going to be fine if you do that. It'll work perfectly, but it's just better to name your variable. It's convention to do this, especially if you're working with other people like I am right now. You can also name this window. I'm just calling it screen. Call this pygame.display.set mode. And now in here we're going to choose the dimensions. So I'm just going to make, let's say, 800 by 600. Okay, and remember, the space here is optional. We don't need the space. Now let's go over what this means. So I created a variable screen. I'm going to use the function pygame.display.set mode. So this creates sort of like starts Pygame and sort of creates the screen, I guess. I'm not exactly sure. Whoops. As I said, I haven't done this in a long time, but Basically, these two things will sort of create the window, the general layout. The dimension. Now, dimensions have to be an ordered pair. So you might ask, why are there two sets of parentheses? Well, let's go over here. The first set of parentheses is for the function. This is a function. Pygame display that set mode is a function. It's predefined for you. That's the advantages of using a library, as I said last time. Then to actually use or a pair or actually a list. No, actually this is a tuple, right? Yeah, a tuple, but whatever. You have to get another set of parentheses. This is, you see, this set of parentheses, as you can see here, this idle automatically does this. This is for the ordered pair. This set of parentheses, on the other hand, this one, that one, and this one, those wrap the function. So this sets the size. There are two more arguments that we can add. You don't have to worry too much about them. You don't have to add them. It'll work without adding them. 0 and 32. 0 is something called the flag number. The flag is actually something complicated. I'm not going to get into it right now. You don't have to have it. 32 just means 32 bits. But for simplicity's sake, I'm not going to have these arguments right now. We can add those later. So we created a dimension of our screen. That's all there is. See, this is the simplicity of Python and Pygame. Like in Java and C++ and many other languages, like create a main method, and it's good and all that, but it's just sometimes not the best thing for beginners. Pygame is, I shouldn't say beginners, but like Pygame is just good in general. It's good for the beginners, and it's also good for the advanced people who want to use Pygame as well. Now we're going to create our main loop. We're going to have this while loop, while true. Now remember, while true, you can also have while 1. It's essentially the same thing as while true, so you can replace true with 1, but personally I prefer true. Make sure true is capitalized. Now, so this creates a screen. Now we have to do stuff with our screen. And now I'm just going to type the code out and I'll explain it later. It's hard to explain and type in the same time. So, I'm just going to... Now this for event, remember, for loop loops through there's many ways to use a for loop. Now, pygame.event.get, another function, this will return, I believe it's a list or a tuple, I'm not sure, but I think it's a list. It returns the list. Actually, I'm not sure if you can even loop through a tuple, but who cares? I'm just going to say it's a list. It might be something else, but actually, no, let me check. That's the usefulness of this. Like, if you wanted to set mode, like, where's set mode? I can show you how this works. Set mode. So, like, you see resolution equals 0, 0. So by default, even if you don't have, remember, these are default arguments. Remember, Python, you can have default arguments. So you could just have Pygame.display.set mode without any arguments. That by default will create a screen at 0, 0. Excuse me, with resolution 0, 0. Yeah, that's very useful, isn't it? So I redefine the resolution. Flags are by default set to 0, and depth? What? Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure about the depth. Okay, I'm very sorry about this, but yeah, I thought that was how many bits, but okay, I'm not sure. I'll cover. That's okay. That's why I didn't include it. Don't take my word for what the third argument is. Just for now, ignore these two arguments. We're trying to learn the basics right now. We can get very advanced later, and we will go over this later. I'll have to relearn this myself, but then we'll go over this again later. For now, just forget I ever mentioned flags and depth, okay? Or even the bits. Just forget I even mentioned it, okay? Pretend I never mentioned it. Just remember, you set the dimensions here, and according to here, apparently, they use list dimensions. I think I'm using a tuple. It's the same thing, really, okay? So that basically creates set the size. So it creates display surface. We'll go over what that means later. Now, what was I going to do again? Oh yeah, Pygame.event.get. I can show you how this works here. Go to event.get. This basically explains what that event.get is. So, it gives you a list, okay. So, Pygame.event.get. See, event list. Okay, so let me explain this now. You know what? Let's just do this. This will make things easier. Just do this. All right. So what this does is basically, if Pygame.event.get, if you just call the function, it'll return the list of events. An event is anything that happens. If you press the J key on your keyboard, that's an event. If you move your mouse, that's actually an event, I think. Pretty sure it is. Yeah, it should be. If you left click, that's an event. You move your mouse again, it's another event. Press another key, another event. So there's tons of possible events. Okay? And you're not only restricted to the mouse and keyboard. So this will give you the list of events. So then for Pygames, remember, for loop just goes through everything in there. So for event in Pygame.event.get, so it'll loop through every single event. It'll go through the first event, then the second event, and the third event. Now I'm going to say if event.type, basically what the event is. So if the event is equal to Pygame, not Puha, Pygame.quit, quit has to be capitalized. This basically does, so we loop through the events, right? This loops through all the events that occur. Now this here is going to say if the event is quit. Now Pygame.quit is the event that occurs if you click on this X here. You'll have a window, and then if you click on the X, that event is called Pygame.quit, and it has to be capitalized. Events are capital. So basically saying if while you loop through that event, and remember this is always occurring. It's while true. It's going to occur forever. So while this is occurring, while it's looping through, if it finds an event that basically Pygame.quit, then what do we want it to do? Well, normally when you hit the X button, you want the window to close, so we do Pygame.quit. That basically means just quit Pygame. It'll exit the window, and then this is where we have to import sys.exit. This basically tells the system to exit. That's sort of like basically saying terminate the program. That's basically what it's saying. Now in other Python programs, like you don't really have to use system.quit, and like it's hard to explain why we need it, but like let's just run this first, make sure it doesn't have any errors right now. Let's run it. So you have a window, it's black by default, but looks working. This is the minimize, so minimize works. But if we hit this, then this is not an error. Okay, notice if there was an error, it was like name error or whatever. It says system exit, that just terminates the program, completely terminates it. So we exited the system. So that's basically what happened here. Now, if I didn't have system.exit, and actually added now, if you're not interested in system.exit, you can end the video right here. This is the end of the tutorial. I'm just going to explain why we need system.exit, or try to explain. So if we don't have system.exit, if I can ever delete it, watch what happens. We close, still works, but error video system not initialized. I'm not actually sure what that means, but by convention you just want system.exit. And while we're at it, actually, not system.exit, sys.exit. And this is actually crucial that we have this. I'm not going to test it out right now, but I'm not going to show you, but if we did not have the quit event if statement, like if we didn't have this part here, if event type goes quit, we quit the game, when you hit the X, it will not quit itself. I'm not joking. It will not quit. It will just freeze. Then you would just open Task Manager and force close the program. So that's why we need this. This is your most basic game program. So it creates a blank window, completely black. That's normal, and that's the most basic window. So congratulations, you created a window. Hopefully you've understood everything I said, and apologize if it's boring right now, but it's important that you understand the basic concepts before we get to the more advanced stuff. So this is the most basic window you can create. From now, and everything from here, we're going to be expanding on this. So we created the basic window. In the next tutorials, we're going to be adding stuff to the window. But this is the most basic window. I think I've said that enough for now. Alright, see you next time. And hopefully you weren't too bored this time. I'll try to make it more entertaining.